Hello again and welcome to another part of Hodgey's Hacks. Normally, when Michael Bailey's in a shot on this particular platform, it's him holding the microphone, but this time he's decided to let me loose.
It's still my microphone though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's actually quite hard to hold.
It's alright, it's on.
Yeah, better making sure of that because I'm technologically inept at times. Anyway, if you've not seen any of the other parts of this, essentially what we're doing is we're giving a bit of a window into what it's like to be Michael, Paddy or Dave and covering Norwich City on an almost daily basis.
Yeah, feels it.
Are you frightened?
Of you, generally, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's alright.
Aye. No. Anyway, let's start by talking, because it's a bit different for Paddy from the other two of you. He is not a Norwich City fan.
Cov boy. He's a Cov boy.
But you are. Just like Dave.
I am. Just like Dave, this is true. I am.
Let's talk about your love for the club when you were a wee guy. So when you were young, what's your earliest memory of going to Carrow Road or Norwich City fandom?
Yeah, well, I think my earliest memory of Norwich City as a club was probably when I was... I think it was probably 98, 99 when Norwich were in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. And we went round my nan's for dinner, and I can't remember if it was live on the telly or whether it was grandstand. It might have been the day before, because of course that was the Hillsborough disaster weekend, so that's quite... I was only young, but that is properly etched in my memory. And I had a teddy, just a bog standard, looked like it's standard.
So what age are you here without giving too much away?
Well, 8. I hope.
Okay.
I might be 7.
So this is 1988.
Too old for a teddy bear, I'm starting to fear. But the teddy bear did have a Norwich kit on it, which was the key point, that it was a teddy bear with a Norwich kit. Not that I was walking around with a teddy bear all the time, obviously.
Not all the time.
Sort of, no. I haven't got one now.
So, I mean, that's a rudimentary memory, but did your love for the club grow from there?
Yeah, I mean, my granddad has always been a season ticket holder for how goodness knows, and has followed the club for however long. It's a thing, certainly with my dad's side of the family, but it was on my mum's side as well. We're all from the area, so it's kind of, you just grow up with it. It's just what happens. It's certainly in my family's that you're a Norwich City fan, you follow the club and you enjoy football, and you have a pride for your football club. You can also therefore slate them a lot as well, and it's just a part of being someone from Norfolk, I think, and so many people grow up in Norfolk and then disappear far-flung places in the world, but take their love of Norwich City with them. So I think from that point on, it was curious growing up, because we didn't spend a lot of money on football. My dad was a big fan, but he never went a lot. So I never really went a lot. I didn't get to see any of the European games, for example. We watched them on the telly. My dad didn't go... He would take me as surprises here and there. So it'd be like...
that's nice.
One time I was at Cubs or something, and we finished at quarter to 8. And Dad said, right, we're going to the football. We're going to the football now? Yes! Norwich are playing in the Data Systems Cup against Crystal Palace. Amazing! But... we'll have to stand up and we haven't got the stool. Don't worry, the stool's in the boot. What a brilliant memory. So, and I think Norwich drew 1-1 or something. It was like a first leg semi-final, the Data Systems Cup. What a game. But that was wonderful. And because we didn't go regularly, it was probably that little bit more magical. So it wasn't until I got a bit older that I could kind of afford to take myself. And also I had a good friend at high school who always got free tickets, so that helped a lot, and I managed to get in with him. He was a lovely guy as well, Ben, though. Sorry, Ben. And we got to enjoy the football, and that actually, as it so happened, his dad was first team coach of the club at the same time. So at that age of 16, 17, I was seeing a few things behind the scenes, and in terms of someone dealing with a job like that I wouldn't have had any otherwise. And so you tie that in with the passion for the club, and that's probably how I've ended up here.
Well, I was going to say, did that create a sort of hunger for, I mean, a phrase that seems to be knocking about now is a look under the bonnet of football, getting a bit more of an idea of how it actually works behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's your phrase, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, trademarking it.
Yeah, it's a curious one, because I remember a careers fair in high school as well, and someone sat in a corner and they were like the careers advisor, and so the idea is we'd all shuffle over there with our parents, you know, oh, what do you want to be, you know? And I think we sort of walked over, and I was like, and Dad said, go on, tell them what you want to be. You want to be a presenter on Match of the Day. I'm like, oh God, like you can't say that to your careers. But then I sort of think about that now, and it's like, oh yeah, I mean that is kind of partly partly what would be a wonderful job to do. It's why I enjoy the job so much. So yeah, I guess that bears into the fact that I love sports. I could watch sport all the time, and fortunately now I'm a dad and things like that. There's other things going on, so I don't just sit in front of the television. But anything with a competition I love, and I love the psychology and the way things are managed and people are managed, and how people go about competing in different sports, and the tactical sides of things. So I guess, and I never really thought about it until I started doing this job, how much that kind of interested me, alongside just, oh wow, it's Norwich City, let's see how they're getting on again. So yeah, the mishmash.
Yeah, that's a bit different. Obviously, your day-to-day job now is covering Norwich City. Is it sometimes a little bit hard to separate the life of being a fan of the club? Or I suppose you've been doing it a while now. Do you get used to sort of what parts you've got to divorce your heart and soul, and then kind of say, right, do you know what, I need to look at this in the cold light of day rather than through the tinted glasses?
Yeah, it's really different now. So I've been doing the job 10.5 years, and I think probably the most giddy I've been was when I got this job. I was so excited about it, and that was as getting this job at the paper on the sports desk. It wasn't about being a Norwich City correspondent at all. It was, maybe we'll get to do some bits and bobs. So just of being that close to the club was so exciting, and it came off the back of me spending a bit of time in London, so I actually didn't get to see as much of Norwich in that sort of run to getting this job as I would have liked anyway. And don't get me wrong, there are still times when if there's a wonderful goal in the press box or Norwich score a late winner against Ipswich, I'll probably accidentally stand up. And you do not do that in the press box. But sometimes no. The 9-year-old in me is like, you've stood up there, stand up, go do it. And clearly I have a real fascination with the football club, and I dearly love the football club. But I don't think I can call myself a fan. It's very different.
I know what you mean.
What I like to think of it as, because I don't think you have to be a fan of the club to cover a club.
No,
I think you do.
Not.
What you do is you become a support. You become someone who really wants the club, whoever you're covering, to do well. Paddy really wants Norwich to do well, because that makes all our lives easier and more enjoyable, clearly. And you speak to all the people, you want them to do well. But I think once I got over the shock of, I'm sitting in the press box, I'm back at Carrow Road, I'm in this bit, I'm not in the lower Berkeley, I'm at a press conference, there's Glen Roeder. I think once you've worked that through your system, the then actual job of trying to hold people to account and speak to them about their situations, and trying to bridge a gap between what the fans want and what the club are feeling they have to do, and the realities of situations, but also the ambitions and desires of the supporters and also the club. I've easily become detached in that way without ever wanting any ill on the club. It's my club. That's it. And it feels very different to looking at other clubs and other games and other sports. But I think I have to appreciate that while I can entirely understand where any fan comes from on any point, I don't pay to go and see them every week. It has to be a slightly different situation, because likewise I'm bridging a gap. So that's sort of the way it's morphed into after 10.5 years.
But does that create a sense of responsibility in terms of, that people are relying on you to be that conduit for information?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question, because I think I have a huge responsibility as a journalist. I will be the strength of my journalism will be on my reputation, on the authority, on how accurate I am, how reliable I am, how fair, even-handed, balanced, all aspects of journalism that go across any facet of journalism.
Do you feel you always get it right, or is there sometimes where you kind of reflect and you go, do you know what, I could maybe have put that differently? Or
yeah, I think all the time, from a typo on Twitter to anything really. And I think if it's something that's honestly held, or from the information I've had at the time, and it's a reasonable position, and you're not doing anything maliciously, it's where you were at the facts, and I don't think you can beat yourself up. Obviously there's things I wish I got first, or questions maybe I should have asked beforehand, or bits of jigsaw puzzles that you've missed. That's like anything in any job. Yeah. But what you try and do is have as few of those as possible when you then either inform or have a debate about something or share an opinion. So that's kind of the art of the job. I think some people think it's watching football and then just going, oh look, I saw some football, he was good, he was blah 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 blah, and there's so much background and stuff that you can't share, but and you have to take everything so much into account to have an informed opinion. And That's an art form, to be honest. It's a really difficult part of the job, but it's one I really take a lot of care over, and you always try and improve at that every season.
Yeah, and it's not an exact science either. I've had incidents in my own career where perhaps my, let's call it, control of information might not have been right. Has there been anything like that?
That sounds interesting.
Well, just sometimes you get told stuff, and sometimes maybe it was said to you in confidence, and maybe there's a bit of a... I mean, people know about on the record and off the record stuff, but sometimes there's things that you hear that maybe weren't true, that you've heard off the record. Has there been any sort of dicey moments for you?
You see how I deflected that question back onto yourself?
Yeah, and did you notice how I came back round?
Yeah. Probably. It's weird, because even if you've got a story that you know to be true and you've put it out there, possibly as an exclusive, that bit waiting for it to actually happen is very... I can't switch off. That's
squeaky bum time.
It's a little bit, even if you know, and then you start doubting yourself, and it's you need a bit of nerve to do the job. You need a thick skin to do the job, especially now. I imagine it would have been very different for, say, Rick Waghorn, Chris Lakey and David Cuffley when they were doing it sort of 5 years ago. It would have been completely different.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Yeah, I think that comes with experience, in fairness. I mean, as I said, I've been doing the job 10 years, and if it plumped me in the situations I'm in now 8 or 9 years ago, I think it would have been a horrible mess, if I'm honest. So you learn to listen, and journalist's job is to filter the information so that you are aware of what you're sharing is correct, and lots of people have axes to grind, and generally they'll want to talk to you about those. So you have to be professional, and that is the skill of the job, doing that bit. And I guess the nice thing is that in football, generally, it's a game. It's all right. We're not dealing generally with death or generally with illness and all these sort of things. So there isn't a big appeal to doing football and sports journalism in general over that, in my personal opinion. That's why, to be honest, I'm in awe of the journalists who work in politics,
of course,
and news in general, and all sorts of other facets of the career.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they call it hard news for a reason. Right. People. Let's talk about people. Okay. Right. So,
love people.
Who's your favourite manager you've dealt with?
Okay. So, favourite's always a horrible question, because there's so many bits you pick from each of them. Like, I really like dealing with Glenn Roeder, and I know there were so many issues with Glenn Roeder around the club, but to deal with, he was great. Paul Lambert, on the other hand, was really hard to deal with. But that little 9-year-old inside me is thinking, but.
Unparalleled success, almost.
And there's a bit that likes the fact that if I somehow managed to walk past Paul Lambert in the street, we'd probably stop and have a chat. So, which is quite the progress given the phone call I had with him at one point, which was 15 minutes of swearing and the 4-month banning that followed. So
he's a naughty boy sometimes.
Best to deal with.
Yep.
Maybe there was a bit of a door opening with Chris Hughton in terms of how we got to deal with him. It's really hard. I can't. None of them were bad. Paul Lambert was the one who was worst to deal with.
Right. Okay.
So
have you done the Michael Bailey thing where I've asked you a positive question and you've come up with a negative answer?
That's me whinging. Because I think I would say Daniel, Alec, Neil, Neil Adams, Gunny. I'm going to miss someone out now, aren't I? Chris Hughton, Glenn Roeder were all pretty good to deal with, and I wouldn't. Some of them were good football managers, which helped. Some of them would be tough to get a more honest answer out of. So they all had their failings, but they were all relatively good to deal with. Paul was quite hard work to deal with, but then you could have a joke with him, and he was a pretty good football manager. I don't know if that's an answer. I haven't got one.
No, it's sort of an answer, but there's one name that's not been mentioned at all here.
Who's that? I told you on this one.
Just a guy, Daniel something.
Fucker. Yeah. I'm sure I think I said him at the start there.
Oh, did you? Fair enough.
Okay, so Daniel is really good to deal with, and you could probably have a good chat with Daniel, and he's really honest.
What's the most random thing you've chatted with him about? Or any player?
Oh, okay. Oh, you sprung that one on me. Most random thing I've ever spoken about.
That's the job.
Well, I still have to say, when Stuart Webber turned up at... It's not a player, but when Stuart Webber turned up at Colney for his first press conference, having a chat, And I was sat on the side, and Dave Freeze was just asking a few final questions, wrapping things up after we'd done our bits. And he was like, "What?" Dave said, "Oh, Stuart, what do you?" Well, it's not, he doesn't speak like that, Dave, as you know, because you've seen the other video. What do you? What else do you like doing in your spare time? Oh, nothing. I'm really boring. I don't like doing anything. I like following Formula One. I was like, "Oh, I do a Formula One podcast, Stuart." Really? And I never, that was quite random because I wasn't expecting that to go that way. And of course, since then, I've had him on my Formula One podcast twice. Probably had more chats with him about Formula One than football.
That's saying nothing. He loves talking about his Formula One. Proudest moment so far covering Norwich City? More from a personal perspective.
Yeah, okay. Covering Norwich City. I was going to say, in terms of journalistically, as my career would be covering all 3.5 weeks of the London Olympics, which was
really
quite literally phenomenal and will never happen again. You never get anywhere near that. It was just, and even in the situation I was covering it for Archant and our titles, to be there basically picking and choosing which event I could go anywhere.
Yeah, well, that's it, because I mean, what people might not know is because you're working for the local titles, the focus would be on local sort of participants in the Olympics and local angles, local news stories. So even though Jess Ennis might be going and creating history, you might be at some other event. Or
yes, that was exactly the premise. But on top of that, it was like we're doing an 8-page supplement every day. If we've got Michael Bailey talking about the big events at the Olympics that day, then you're going to be there. So I was there on Super Saturday. I was there the day after when Usain Bolt won the 100 metres. But I saw both of Mo Farah's golds. And then I was at the cycling for the time trial. And I was literally able to go, we're going to win a gold here. Let's go there. And even the nationals, like there were national guys I know who were like, well, I'm at the judo for 3 weeks. Great. I was at the judo for one time. And it was like, because I was following Colin Oates, which was brilliant, but his day was all on one day, so I never had to go again. And I was like, what is going on? I've got to try and write classic. I've got to write authoritatively about the judo. Ippon, brilliant, well done, Colin Oates. So yeah, I had best of both worlds, which is brilliant. But that's not Norwich City. I appreciate that. So yeah,
Waza Ari, that's a judo term, isn't it?
That is now. You've told me.
There we go.
It was like 8 years ago now, wasn't it? Or 6 years ago. Let's not get into that. Yeah, it's a great question. Proudest moment. I know Dave mentioned Wembley, and that was, I think there was possibly and it's not a really obvious answer, but having followed Norwich since I was 8, 7, whatever it was, to be. I know what Norwich's record was in all sorts of situations. To have covered through the semi-finals where everyone had always spoken about what happened in '85, and then to be there with what was happening in 2014-15 was like, oh, wow. And then for Norwich to play at Wembley and do what they did, which was 2-0 up after 20 minutes or whatever, and coasting in a major final for promotion, where at that point you're hoping the club could kick on and be in the Premier League for however many years. Phenomenal to be in a position where I could speak to everyone and write my viewpoints on it. When things are really good at the club, just like writing a piece about James Maddison last year, writing pieces about Bradley Johnson in that season when they went up via the playoffs. That's just such an honour. They all those little bits make me proud. I think that constitutes an answer. What's the most embarrassing thing you've done? Yeah, probably with England's under-21s at Carrow Road. Okay. So you're covering the under-21s. You get all the national hacks sat there in the press conference, and Stuart Pearce is sat in front of me, and I think I said something about them. I asked a question about whether they were favourites. It was under-21s European Championship playoff to qualify against Romania, and I think I asked him if they were favourites, or most people. I think I said most people would consider you favourites, Stuart, in the second leg.
Never make
what
predictions.
Do you know about under-21s football? So, and obviously all the national hacks are like, oh, that's a stupid question. So, and not only that, Stuart Pearce then went on to mention it, like in his next 5 press conference interviews, like wherever he was. I think he was still mentioning it when they were at the European Championships. Even 2 years later, I remember 2 years ago, this journalist asked me if we were favourites. I was like, all right, Stuart, dial it down. So yeah, that was quite embarrassing, and that happened at Carrow Road. So I think we'll take that.
Not your greatest moment.
No.
This is a different one. Norwich City fans, once Paul Lambert got them to the Premier League, were full of sort of optimism that that's where Norwich City belonged. But it seems like they're getting a little bit more patient and a little bit more used to second tier football again. where do you stand on that? Where do you think Norwich City belong?
Where do they belong? I have to be honest, I would never write that Norwich City belong in the Premier League. Because how
Fair
can
enough.
you say that? Because Leeds belong in the Premier League, Sheffield United, on all the same you could name 40, 30 clubs probably, 35 clubs that belong in the Premier League, and there's only 20 spaces. So what do you do with that?
Very nicely done. That was
so that's it. But then I completely understand the fans who are, you know, in fairness, before the recent run, you know, when I was growing up, Norwich were in sort of 80s to mid 90s. They were in the top flight consistently through that. They were in 2 FA Cup semi-finals. They were finishing third. They put in a couple of half title challenges. So you know, Norwich have been at that level probably when football was a little bit more equal, egalitarian.
Yeah.
So, you know, it swings and roundabouts. But, I mean, realistically, Norwich should be in the top half of the Championship as a minimum. It is, and probably always challenging for promotion from the Championship as a minimum. And they should be able to establish themselves for runs in the Premier League. And that's where history tells us generally they've been in the last 30, 40 years. So that's where they should be. But where you deserve to be, where you belong to, that depends on so many facets. In terms of the fan base, I think, excuse me, my mouth's getting dry. I'm going to get a drink. Look at that.
There we go. How quick was that?
Thank you.
May I?
If you want.
Thank you.
Share and share alike. Do you want to do it while I'm answering?
Yeah.
This is golden video, by the way. Go on, Hodgey. So don't spill it down
all
in your
over my
beard.
mouth.
This is great. I'm cutting this out. We're cutting this out.
Probably not.
So in terms of what was it? Yeah. So where they belong, was that what I was saying? I can't remember.
Yeah. Norwich City, do they belong in the Premier League? And I think like the season will be by the time we get to the bottom of that.
Yeah. I can't remember what I was going to say now. I'll see if I think about it now. But there we go. Yeah.
Nah. So Norwich City.
The fans. Got it.
Yes.
The fans. I think they. Some fans are not still patient. They see where Norwich were recently and think they should be there. And I don't know if that's an expectation level that I don't think that's how some fans will see it. So it is mostly about the ones who are paying in that situation. I would say the ones who are paying, whether they're happy with what they're seeing. And I think that's why you judge a lot on the atmosphere at Carrow Road and away from home. And if they're paying money and they're not happy, that's a different level to a lot of people being unhappy on social media. It has to be, even though everyone supports the football club and wants the club to do well. So I think there's a bit more reality, but the reality always comes with hope that it's going to turn around quite quickly. And you know what we see in the next 2 or 3 years will be interesting in that regard.
Yeah, good that we're going viral with me getting water in my beard. That's we were talking about embarrassing journalistic moments. I've probably just got another one. Although we were talking about this before I came on, like I always come up with at least one sort of real Alan Partridge moment anytime I'm on anything. So that's one reason if you want to follow my career is just for the moments of Partridge.
That's why I do.
Yeah, that's it.